Today, we reported the news that Multicoin Capital raised its second venture fund for $100 million. So they go to institutional investors, other limited partners. They get big checks and they invest in crypto startups across the ecosystem. That's how it works here. This obviously comes on the heels of a report in the Financial Times, I think it was last week, about A16Z, Andreessen Horowitz, reportedly collecting checks for a $1 billion crypto venture fund, according to sources that the FT spoke with. So notably, this happens, in the wake of Coinbase's public listing. There seems to be an appetite to maybe invest in the next Coinbase among LPs who either previously were invested in such projects or are looking to get involved for the first time. That's what these big numbers say to me. I'm going to throw this to Will. What does this mean for crypto startups in the space? Seems like it might be a good time to pursue funding. There seems to be like a couple of big fund announcements that have been made recently suggesting that the appetite for backing some of these early stage projects is still out there.
Yeah, great point. So there's a few things that go on here in my mind's eye. I think a lot of people have money, they have dry powder, they can go in and invest in these startups. On the flip side, as a startup, you might not get the best VCs when it comes to bull markets because everybody wants to take a part of your tech. And so I think often we see like the higher class tech products out there, the higher class startups with really innovative ideas are actually holding back and they're not taking cash right now because they don't want their tech to be muddled with by VCs coming in and trying to like grab as part of the equity. So that's an interesting kind of anecdote here you maybe wouldn't think of in the first part. I've just kind of seen that around from some startups. On the flip side, it is interesting to note that the A16Zs of the world and the Multicoins of the world did very well over the last decade. Multicoin, I think at the beginning of the year, people were a little down on it, and then come a calendar year later, and their investments have just done so well. Notably, Solana was a huge bet that they put a lot of cash on, which of course is like an Ethereum alternative that FTX, one of the largest newer exchanges on the market, has a lot of money in as well. And Solana has just done so well, like much higher valuations than anyone would have seen. And Multicoin, of course, has a huge stake in that. So they're just getting fresh powder. I'd be interested to see what these valuations and money these firms have walked away from the table with compared to other Silicon Valley VCs and what they have made over last 10 to 5 years, kind of breaking down by categories. That would be interesting to me. But yeah, just to kind of finalize your question there, I think it kind of depends on which startup is looking for money and which one isn't. And the higher class ones often are pretty content with just working on their tech.
Yeah, Solana a big one, and Helium also a big one in the Multicoin portfolio this year. Ben, I saw your hand shoot up. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to talk about that Helium investment because I think that's an important part of this story for the next round of kind of funding that might happen is, Multicoin made a big bet on them. They're kind of a blockchain IoT company that's working on developing further networks around that. And what I'm really curious about is we are seeing all these sort of crypto native like financial and custodial firms be snapped up by some of these big players. So what is that next round of innovation in the blockchain kind of startup space going to be? Is it going to be more financial products? Is it going to be maybe, trying to deliver further on some of the additional promises of decentralization that we talk about so much on this show, but, aren't the ones necessarily getting acquired for like tens of millions of dollars or whatever? And so if there's more money for people to take a risk and like do something that is, maybe not being done or envisioning something in a new use case, that's what I'm really excited about because I think that makes the whole like case for crypto much stronger when it's not just kind of siloed in one developmental area. And Helium was an example of that, in particular the Multicoin saying, hey, we're looking for like things people aren't thinking about in the current kind of stream of thought. That leads me to think that there could be some cool stuff down the line.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Facebook and sort of this promise of a new internet, right? I think this idea of like user-owned networks is gaining a lot of steam, and the like token funded, like token projects basically represent ways for people who participate in these networks to own and control the fate of these networks. That to me is a compelling alternative to what we see with like Facebook and Twitter and Google. So I think Helium sort of speaks to that, right? Like these are people who run little nodes and they can route like internet traffic from like a local e-scooter through their node and be paid to carry that bandwidth through the ether as it was. I'm going to throw this down to Naomi. I mean, so as all these venture funds are raising, again, what Will called that dry powder, where are you seeing Like, where are you seeing this funding potentially go? Like, what are you seeing might get funded here now that all these big VCs have a bunch of money to spend?
For sure. I mean, just to carry on Ben's point there. So the managing partner of Multicoin, he said, he's seeking out weird and different projects. And so that's cool. I really like that, because you have so much money in traditional finance that goes to whatever the sure thing is. And right now you're seeing a lot of people put things like Bitcoin on their balance sheet because it's the sure thing. It's been proven. It's just so exciting that we're in this world where there is a lot of money flowing around, and it is seeking out, unconventional things, because that's how we really spur innovation forward. And so the fact that people are making big bets on these unknown projects or things that are a little bit different or weird, or, I think that's really interesting and exactly what we need in finance, where we have had just the same thing for so long. And then Bitcoin comes along and changes everything. And now we're just seeing innovation all over the place, and funds like this that are willing to support people who are building in those areas. So super cool. And I'm excited to see what happens there.